Welcome everyone. I'm Sue Dorward with the OpenAir Carbon Removal Challenge, and I'm going to kick us off for about 5 minutes with an intro, and then I'll hand over to Taylor Inslee from TerraSet, who's going to run our webinar panel with the Q&A and discussion, and then we'll have plenty of time at the end, 15 minutes or so, for audience Q&A with one of our OpenAir members, Bea, who's going to lead that. So first off, I want to do some introductions of who we are. OpenAir is a global grassroots volunteer organization. So all of our organizing committee work is done by volunteers. And so I'd like to thank our volunteers, Matt Parker, Duncan McDowell, students Adrian Becerra and Marcus Lewick. And as I mentioned, Bea Bakari Barreto is handling our audience Q&A today. And she's the founder of B3 Carbon, a consulting company focused on decarbonization and CDR. So that's OpenAir. What's carbon removal? In typical tradition for this is CDR, Toby Bryce used to always be very clear about what carbon removal is and what it isn't. It is reduction of CO2 in the atmosphere combined with durable storage so that it's taken out of the carbon cycle stored in a semi-permanent way. So not being released again into the atmosphere in the near term. It's not capturing CO2 from fossil fuel combustion. That's carbon capture and storage, or utilization and storage. That's not what we're talking about today. And we still need to reduce emissions. Carbon removal is not a replacement for our need to reduce carbon emissions. So just so everyone's clear on what we're talking about here today. So what is the Carbon Removal Challenge? It's a program that we launched. This is our 4th year. We launched it back in September this year at New York Climate Week. And then throughout the year, we've had webinars and opportunities for mentoring for the student teams. We have student teams that are developing carbon removal solutions and submitting those to be evaluated by our team of judges. So we're right in the middle of our judging period right now. And next week, the judges' evaluations are due, and we will figure out who the finalists are. And we will announce the finalist teams in April. And then in May, they will present at Carbon Unbound in New York City. So we'll bring them to New York City for that conference. So thank you to Carbon Unbound East Coast for sponsoring the presentations. As I mentioned, we have webinars every month, and the links are on our webpage. You can see here we're on webinar number 6 here in March, and we're going to have another webinar in April, which we still have to determine who that's going to be with. Hopefully next week we'll get that all sorted out. But be on the lookout in your emails for an announcement of next month's webinar. We'd like to thank our sponsors. We have TerraSet is one of our bronze sponsors, and we've got Taylor from TerraSet here today to moderate the panel. Carbon Business Council is another bronze level sponsor, and Carbon Unbound is our venue sponsor, and Possible Studio and Carbon Manager LLC are in-kind sponsors with my efforts and Duncan McDowell's efforts on the organizing committee. We also have a crowdfunding campaign where we've raised a good amount of money. If you noticed in our last month, we only had about $2,000 raised, so we had a very generous anonymous donor contribute, and so we're close to our goal, but we would love to raise a little more money. before next week. So Monday is our deadline for fundraising for this year's program. If you are a member of the public or not, we don't want students to be donating, but if you're participating in our program and enjoying our webinars, please consider donating to our crowdfunding campaign, or contact us to become an official sponsor. But again, our deadline is next Monday, and we'll be choosing our winning teams based on, in part, on how much money we have to bring the teams to New York City. So please help us out if you can. All right, and before I sign off, I just wanted to mention, I realized I missed in my notes, we have teams this year from all over the world who've submitted applications for the challenge. They're from Australia, Azerbaijan, Canada, China, India, Kenya, South Korea, and the United States. So it's a very exciting year. We're looking forward to getting the judging done and announcing the winners next month. All right, so that's it for me for my intro. I will stop sharing and I'll hand off to Taylor, who will be taking over the discussion with our panelists and having the panelists introduce themselves.
Great. Yeah. Welcome, everyone. And thank you so much to the OpenAir team for having us. I'm really excited to be here to chat with some of the other buyers in the space about how we make our purchase decisions, what it takes to build portfolios of impactful solutions, how we all got into this rapidly evolving and very important sector. A little bit of background. I'm Taylor Inslee. I'm the head of growth at TerraSet. We are a US-based nonprofit, and we pool philanthropic capital from high net worth individuals, foundations, donor advised funds, and then we make pre-purchases of carbon removal and super pollutants. So as a buyer, we care a lot about impact. We'll hear a lot about what all of the other buyers care about too today. But we care about the impact beyond the removal, and we've moved about $10 million across a portfolio of 25 solutions that span methodology, geography, and we support all of them. I'd like to take a second to just set the scene before we dive in and share a little bit more about the demand for carbon removal. I think it's something that a lot of people in this sector are sharing concerns about, but I'd say that what we're seeing on the ground is that demand for carbon removal hasn't gone away, but it's definitely changing shape. It's more financialized, it's more rigorous, a lot less forgiving of vague claims that maybe would have passed a year or two ago. We're seeing buyers get a lot smarter, technologies are getting more complex, and then we're also seeing a lot of really interesting intersections and partnerships with sectors like waste management or agriculture. And I think that's all really good news for everyone in this room, because I think the buyers on this panel are the kinds of sophisticated purchasers that are trying to raise that floor for the whole market. They're asking questions like, what does impact mean? How does a purchase affect the community where a project is, or how my dollar can build the market, not just offset a footprint? Today we have 4 buyers who are actively buying carbon removal portfolios or building carbon removal portfolios, and they're here to help us unpack what is steering that demand and what that means for solutions or pathways, and which ones are going to scale and which ones might stall. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves. You can share your name, your role, and how you got into this sector. And if you can remember to kind of a quick overview of what your procurement program looks like. Let's start with Mitch.
Sweet. Okay, I'm Mitch. I work at Shopify and I lead our climate team. And our climate team does a bunch of different things. We do our annual emissions calculations. We do our annual climate report, which is published in March of every year, so it should be coming out soon. And then we have our sustainability fund, which is where we do our carbon removal procurement. Now, when we first launched in around 2019, for a few years, we were doing mostly our own procurement. And then we joined Frontier in 2022. And for those of you in the audience who don't know what Frontier is, it's a $1 billion advanced market commitment to spend that amount of money on permanent carbon removal by 2030. It's founded by ourselves and Stripe, Google, Meta, and McKinsey. And there's been other buyers who have joined since. So now the majority of our procurement happens through Frontier. I mean, Taylor, you alluded to the fact that this market's getting more complex and we've needed to rely on others, which with much greater expertise than we have as a small team at Shopify.
Mhm.
In terms of how I got in the space, it's a bit of an unconventional route. I did a business undergrad and then I worked as an auditor for 4 years. And I really wanted to get into the space after that. I talked to someone, they told me I needed to go back to school to get some sort of like science background. But I didn't have the prerequisites to get like science focus masters. So I did like a business science focus masters. And then while I was in school, we had an internship component and we were required to go and find like our own job during the summer. And I was looking at company sustainability reports and I realized Shopify didn't have one. So I volunteered to write their sustainability report. I had like a connection to Shopify and basically volunteered to write it for free. I think I got paid like 5K for the summer. And then while I was writing it, they stood up our CDR procurement program and I got hired out of my master's, which is pretty sweet. Definitely like great place, right time. Yeah, that's me.
Very cool. Sophie?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Sophie Westover, head of climate at Wren. I lead project sourcing, due diligence, and portfolio management at Wren. Wren was started in 2019. We work to make climate action easy for businesses and individuals. Our primary product is for consumers, so individuals can go onto our website, calculate their carbon footprint, and offset it by funding diverse climate projects. We do also work with businesses, typically crafting custom portfolios for them to meet their sustainability objectives. My background is primarily in the nature-based solution space. My first introduction to carbon markets was in 2016 when I was working on REDD+ readiness initiatives in Southeast Asia. And then in grad school, the focus of my studies was on the voluntary carbon market. And I really didn't get into CDR until 2022 when I joined Wren, which had a CDR program when I joined. I was kind of skeptical of the CDR ecosystem, and it took me a couple of months to kind of get up to speed on the sector. But since I've built our CDR program up over the last 3 years, and we now have a portfolio dedicated to scaling durable CDR through pre-purchases, and we also run a grant program to accelerate early stage CDR research and development. So we now make CDR purchases across the sector and have historically contributed around $1 million annually to the CDR ecosystem via policy support, pre-purchases, and grant making. To date, we've pre-purchased around 16,000 tons of CDR, and in total, our climate impact is just reached about $16 million in climate contributions to date. So yeah, really excited to be here and chat with y'all.
Awesome. Thank you. Luke?
Yeah, thanks everybody for having me. Luke Hawbaker, I'm the director of offtake at Carbon Direct. Carbon Direct's a trusted energy and climate solutions company. We work on combining world-class science expertise and technical rigor, along with market insights to help companies meet decarbonization goals, power goals, a wide range of solutions that we offer in the space. Within Carbon Direct, I sit on our supply team. So Carbon Direct's supply team works to identify really high quality CDR projects, bring them to market, and support buyers in near-term spot purchases and long-term forward offtake. We focus on really trying to identify the most commercially viable and highest integrity CDRs so that we're de-risking projects in multiple ways for the buyers that we work with. I lead our offtake team, which means that I work very closely with buyers on near-term and long-term goals every day of the week, and also work to provide the buyer perspective within our team as we're identifying developers to work with and to help scale. I got into the space through conservation. My background's very much in the nature-based side of things. I worked for 5 years at the Nature Conservancy. I spent a couple of years working in post-wildfire reforestation, and continue to be driven by the desire to see good money go to good projects on the ground, but have expanded my gamut to cover hybrid and engineered work too now.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, Aidan.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Aidan Preston. I lead the commercial CDR program at Milkywire. Milkywire is an impact firm that helps companies fund impactful and catalytic BVCM projects and/or achieve their net zero goals through high-quality CDR purchases. My path into the field of CDR was a bit unusual, which might make it usual. I joined the DOE as a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow, and that's a program that puts PhD scientists into the government for like 1 to 2 year fellowships. And it's unusual because I was trained as a molecular biologist, and I was hoping to transition into climate. So I was fortunate to land at DOE right when the CDR purchase program was being designed, and I managed the prize program at DOE, helping craft that CDR purchase program as well as the DAC Pilots Prize. Then when the administration changed and deprioritized climate work, I landed at Milkywire. At Milkywire, our internal procurement program focuses on making like the most catalytic CDR purchases possible. So we're explicitly and intentionally trying to act as a catalyst for the ecosystem. To date, we've supported 40 different CDR projects across all durable pathways. And we think of the 2020s as like the CDR startup decade, the time to try to figure out what works and give promising ideas the chance to grow. So we're hoping to make some misses along the way. We want to have a high risk tolerance.
Very cool, very cool. All right, so let's get into it. One of the first questions I have, and any of you can answer this, and if you don't answer, I'll pick on you. When you are building your carbon removal portfolio, how do you actually balance the long-term, near-term, low-cost, early stage? How do you kind of think about that framework? And is there a ratio or is it more instinctual?
I'm happy to keep talking about high risk purchases, I guess. So I think the answer does completely depend on like what you're trying to accomplish. So since we're trying to accomplish like making high leverage purchases, we are explicitly leaning towards like early stage, even higher cost if it has to be, because we think the ecosystem just like needs make more bets being made and like more altruistic catalytic buyers focused on innovation. So yeah, we're absolutely not optimizing for tons purchased today. We're optimizing for like the ecosystem in 2040. So some of our purchases are more expensive on a per ton basis, and some might not deliver at all, but that's kind of the point for us, at least at Milkywire.
Yeah, that's kind of at Terraset, that's how we think about it too. Mitch?
Yeah, similar to both of you guys. Like our program is CEO driven, so we have a like directive from our CEO to focus on long-term, high-cost CDR. Our CEO thinks that Shopify is well positioned to support this space just because of, I guess, our financial resources, but also the fact that we're like Shopify as a company is used to kickstarting new markets. I mean, we've been a big part of like creating the e-commerce world. So that's kind of why he's decided to focus on this space. We do still buy some lower cost near term solutions because we have a annual carbon neutral commitment, but we're slowly trying to work towards fully compensating that with durable CDR. It's just there's not a ton of deliveries happening, so that makes it a little bit challenging.
Mm-hmm. Luke, I saw you on mute.
Yeah. I think, similar to what's been said, it really starts with the sort of the buyer's goal that they're working on specifically. Most people start with that sort of annual in-year procurement towards reaching a neutrality goal for that year. And given that most buyers that we work with start with those nearer term, lower cost removals, they're oftentimes working with the target budget and they're trying to squeeze as much, impact and also catalytic purchasing out of that per ton budget that they see. So you'll see folks, I think, start with a near term, low cost removal, something like IFM credits, and then work to increase over time their annual budget and also with it the sort of durability and technology profile of the purchases that they're doing. And as a buyer gets more sophisticated and gets that greater budget, then they're starting to weave in more of those higher cost technologies. So we construct our portfolios basically to match that. The majority of the credits that we bring to market are MBS credits. They, are issuing in the near term. But we're constantly pushing to help make sure that those projects that folks are going to need in 2028, 2029, 2030, and beyond, that need to get built today are also in long-term offtake conversations to help get them through the stages of investment that they need to really come online. So I'm thinking about like bioenergy and CCS facilities around the United States, Canada, and elsewhere.
Yeah, I think from our side, definitely some overlap with the other panelists, but I think the fundamental difference is Wren is set up to help individuals and businesses offset today. So we do need some lower cost near-term removal and avoidance projects in our portfolio so we can confidently do that at a reasonable cost to the consumer. And of course, we don't count pre-purchases for CDR toward offsetting claims because those credits won't be delivered for a few years. So this ultimately results in a portfolio makeup that's roughly 30% CDR, 30% industrial avoidance, 20% nature-based solutions, 15% to household devices like cook stoves, and then 5% to policy. The funding for CDR projects, those kind of early stage higher cost technologies, we kind of similarly think as kind of contributions towards building up the technologies that we know we will need in the future to meet global climate targets. So basically, we're trying to help those early stage companies scale, reduce their costs, and meaningfully contribute to the 10 gigaton goal that the industry has set. So I think in short, the pre-purchases we make serve a different purpose than the short-term lower cost removals and avoidance projects we fund. One serves to provide impact today with an ex-post carbon credit that our users can offset with, and one serves to catalyze the scale up of durable CDR technologies that we know we will need in the future to meet net zero. We know we need both, so we kind of do both. And I think one interesting thing that we do at Wren that kind of speaks to this is the way that we've structured our Trailblazer portfolio, which is our portfolio focused on CDR. So we pair each durable CDR ton with a super pollutant ton. So a consumer can offset today with that credit and then fund a durable ton of carbon removal that will be delivered in the future.
Very interesting. Cool. I mean, we're talking a lot about how you build that portfolio and how you think about those and balance all those things, but is there anything that's like a must-have criteria when you're evaluating? And I guess the flip side of that is there anything that's a red flag for you when you're looking at individual companies?
Happy to keep going. Okay, this is like my hot take that I've been noodling on for a little while. My hot take is that there are really experienced scientists and researchers, some of whom are in this room, and their teams are doing excellent work. And they can do a vastly better job on the technical and scientific due diligence than I can as a single individual leading purchase decisions. So, of course, there needs to be rigorous and scientifically valid MRV, and we need to be looking at the common dimensions of additionality, permanence, leakage, et cetera. But I think we can look to the decisions of experienced buyers or ask from insight from technical experts about a project to navigate kind of that must-have criteria, which I think is kind of, just almost a given at this point. So for example, someone mentioned Frontier earlier. They have like 53 projects they've assessed, and there are oftentimes many suppliers that will have pre-issuance ratings or analyses completed by third parties that they're willing to share. And those are really, really helpful for us because it helps break down the science behind the project and surface unanswered scientific questions or risks. So given that the scientific understanding and research behind the project is sound, I think we at Wren also consider catalytic impact and co-benefits as additional must-haves. So we really want to see that there's a pathway to bring down costs. We love when there's an indication that our purchase has the potential to unlock additional investment from another buyer or institutional investor, and that the solution has room to scale and will not tap out because of a binding constraint like access to applicable feedstocks or suitable sites to carry out activities. And then lastly, that the project can contribute to solving other sustainable development goals. So for example, maybe it increases yields for small scale farmers or contributes to a just transition. So because we want to have a hand in scaling the solution or providing catalytic capital, we actually typically stay away from the really popular, well-funded suppliers because we feel our marginal dollar is not as critical to a supplier that might just have one or two small pre-purchase deals in place and is kind of just starting to build the reputation and gain market traction. So to kind of summarize that, I would say, like, in addition to the scientific certainty of the pathway, I would categorize our must-haves as one, scalability potential, and two, demonstrated contribution to sustainable systems change. And I think, like, in that line of thought, a major red flag for us is a lack of transparency and an unwillingness on behalf of the supplier to communicate the story or the why behind that project. And that's really important for us because we are consumer facing and we really want to be able to tell strong stories about what the project is accomplishing and help our consumers connect with the project that they're funding. So if a project isn't willing to work with us to craft communication materials, provide us with photos and updates, and be transparent about the challenges they're facing, then we're typically unwilling to work with them because we really want to have personal relationships with project developers and have that direct contact with them. And I think maybe that's a unique attribute of Wren, but I think there are others in the room that might echo that sentiment.
Yeah, I mean, the consumer facing part is huge, right? So those stories are really important. Curious what maybe one or two of the other panelists think about this.
Yeah, I think that was an awesome answer, Sophie, and you like touched on so many things that we also care about. I think the only thing I would add is, and maybe I'm sure this is also shared by you all as well, but specific to Shopify, we care a lot about the founder of the company. Shopify is a founder-led organization. We actually like purposely bring in a lot of founders to work at Shopify via acquihires, things like that. So when we're looking at carbon removal companies, we really care about the quality of the founder. Is it the right person in place to scale this company beyond where they're currently at?
Yeah, I love that answer. Sophie, loved you hit on a wide range of things. I think when we're evaluating projects, we run almost everything. We run everything through the criteria for high quality CDR that Carbon Direct publishes each year with Microsoft. No surprise there, but I think I'm contractually obligated to mention it in any public call. And so that's a combination of the shoulds and musts that we look for developers in each specific vertical. I think the thing that our team is really paying attention to right now, in particular, is around what the deliverability of the project looks like, which I think you touched on. Is this something that we think can get built if it's an engineered facility? Is this, a forestry project that can actually get trees in the ground? Is the track record of a developer or say timberland owner one that will enable them to operate with limited risk and a strong likelihood of success? And then do we think that it can be competitive within its vertical from a price perspective? I think we're starting to see a lot more price competition both across and within verticals as some of the major buyers start to think about their long-term offtakes. What price is a bioenergy or CCS project going to be competitive at? How does that compare to say a retrofit on a pulp and paper facility? How do you look at reforestation projects that start to get into the upper bounds of nature-based solutions and begin to compete with the buyer's budget for, say, biochar or some of the lower cost hybrid solutions? So that's been a big focus recently for our team as we help clients think about their long-term kind of financial goals, and is all part of having that like catalytic impact at scale.
One red flag that maybe is relevant to the audience here that are trying to build CDR companies. If a company like undersells their risk to delivery, I think as like a scientist, you're trained to identify weaknesses and arguments and logic. So if someone has like an unaddressed weakness in their proposal, I like almost immediately lose respect for the science the team is capable of. I think you're competing against like 100 proposals for every open call. So you're looking for an excuse to say no to folks. And if they're trying to hide and like increase their certainty or like overinflate their certainty of delivery, it becomes easy to say like, okay, they're not being honest with me. Why would I progress them in the process? And then lastly, I would like to say, yes, Sophie did a really good job answering this question and made it hard for the rest of us.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to what Sophie said too about transparency. Like most buyers at this stage in the market, like we want to work with you. We're in this because we are trying to help build a market. So transparency or not being completely truthful about where your project is at is just like never a helpful thing. And then speaking about the market, it's matured a lot over probably the last couple of years specifically, but I'm curious where you all see it today. And then the real question I'm trying to get at is like, what's the one thing that you most want to see solved? Is it MRV? Is it pricing? Is it permanence verification? Like, what's the thing that you're like, I want this solved as the market is moving forward?
Can jump on that one first. I think we just put out a white paper called CDR 2.0 that outlines kind of 5 pillars of work that we're really trying to see happen in CDR, and it all points towards getting projects successfully deployed and delivered. I think we're at a place in the CDR market where we've made a ton of progress, as you alluded to, Taylor, and getting to a next level of scale. And I'd be remiss if I didn't, note the co-panelists' role in helping get the market to that stage. So it's a really, been exciting growth over the last few years. And now I think we're at a place where getting to something closer to standardization across what it means for a CDR project to go from inception to actual actual build and delivery of new CDR is essential. And so we really focus in on technical readiness. What can you do to increase project assurance that we see in more, larger infrastructure builds where there's a lot of lessons learned for the CDR space? How can you get to standard bankable contracting? How do we create greater transactional ease? We've started to put a lot of these pieces together in the CDR space in terms of project financiers, sophisticated developers, sophisticated engineering firms, and bringing those together into something that creates a repeatable, replicable process for building out CDR and ensuring these projects get built is the major thing I think we as a firm are focused on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think for me it's a bit of a selfish request, but I think demand fragmentation is one structural issue I'd like to see solved. I think reducing friction for new buyers and small buyers can be really impactful. So I want to see more places to share due diligence notes with peers, find opportunities to aggregate demand among small buyers and collaborate with peers to find ways to move creative capital. And I actually think Taylor and I have a great example of how that can work. So we both participated in the Air Miners Buyers Club. And at the time, Wren wanted to make a purchase from a supplier. We brought that ambition to the Buyers Club and ended up finding a way to work with TerraSet to purchase tons through their revolving loan fund, which ultimately benefited Wren, benefited TerraSet and the supplier. And I think that there's, obviously a clear struggle to finance early CDR projects, and creative capital structures like the revolving loan fund kind of fill that gap by blending philanthropy with market demand. And as a result of that deal, TerraSet has seen increased interest from other buyers wanting to replicate that approach. Air Miners ended up following Wren with another purchase. And I think the story here is that when we look to each other as collaborators and not competitors, we can really help to catalyze the industry and scale new technologies. So I want to see more of that collaboration among small buyers in the space, whether it's purely sharing notes and experiences, finding ways to stack different forms of capital, or aggregating our demand together. I think there's power in numbers and power in community. And if we kind of leverage those two things, we can help continue to cultivate the sector.
Yeah, I think there's this like misunderstanding that just because a lot of millions of dollars are being moved, that it's a lot of people that are doing it, because a lot of these sustainability teams are like one person or three people, and we're all trying to like do all of the diligence and figure it out together. And so I totally agree that more on-ramps for smaller and medium-sized companies, I think, and more resources is something I'm really hoping to see in the coming years for this sector. I want to shift gears a little bit because we have a lot of students here who are building CDR solutions right now. So I'm curious, just to zoom way out from this conversation, what's one thing that you wish someone had told you when you were starting out in CDR? Like, is there knowledge you wish you had? Is there a skill set, experiences, things like that? What kind of advice would you give to those students?
The best advice I've ever gotten, and maybe it just came too late, so this is something I wish someone told me earlier, is to like tell people what you want. So like humans are naturally inclined to want to help each other. So if you're having a coffee conversation with someone who has a cool job, don't be shy about saying like where you want to be or what kind of job you want to do. Like people can't help you unless they know what kind of help you're looking for. And I know it can feel like embarrassing or it's easy to be shy about like what you're looking for. But I think if you're open about that when talking to people, then you'll be on their mind when they hear of an opportunity that might be right for you. So when you're networking with folks, I would just say be open and clear with like, here's what I'm thinking, here's where I want to be. Do you have advice? And yeah, let me know if you hear of anything that like you think might be a good fit for me.
Great advice.
Yeah, it's awesome. One thing like it's like the one thing that is like the most important across any role across CDR is your ability to communicate. So if you're going to work on something, work on that and like obsess over it because it's like literally the difference between getting things done and getting not getting things done. Like if you're in a corporate job, you have to convince your leadership to support a project, and that's really hard when it's totally outside of the regular course of business. When you're a CDR developer, you have to convince a buyer or investor to support your project, and there's only so much money to go around, and there's a lot of other really good communicators in the space. So just like get really good at communication.
Yeah, clarity's key for sure. Luke or Sophie?
I think in the vein of communication, invest in kind of understanding a range of disciplines and being able to communicate across them. I was a history major in school. My background's been mainly in like business development and partnerships, and I so wish I'd gotten a forestry degree. Is an extreme example of that. But I've been lucky to work with scientists across each stage of my career, and at each stage, I kind of try to gain a little bit deeper understanding of what started as ecosystem services and then became reforestation techniques, and now is talking about the finer points of implementing IFM projects. And so I think being able to know enough to be dangerous across a range of disciplines will serve you well in a space that's as diverse and varied as the CDR one.
Sophie?
Yeah, I think similar communication topic. I think for me, like it's okay that I'll never be an expert in any one CDR pathway. I am not a scientist by training. And I think that's okay because there are excellent scientists and researchers out there that we can draw from. So I think if someone had told me like just because you don't understand something at first doesn't mean you can't understand it at all. Like there are ways to figure out how projects work, understand kind of the basic mechanisms of a CDR pathway without like getting a PhD in that pathway. Um, I think is like my tip. Like I do benefit from being a generalist in my role and kind of being able to understand the mechanisms behind a broad range of pathways. And I think really strong communications and storytelling helps in that journey.
Yeah, I also think there's something to what you both just said. Like the learning doesn't ever stop. Like
Yeah.
I'm at a director level and I still like am in the middle of a climate finance 101 class because I'm like, I gotta understand how all this stuff works on the financial side as we build out these really interesting creative financial instruments. Like I need to be able to talk about that and communicate it with donors, right? And I'm an NGO person. I've fundraised for my career. So I think don't underestimate the power of 101 free 101 classes online. I think that's something that as we're all learning and building this sector, it's something that I've found very, very useful in a pinch. One final question I want to ask each of you to answer is what's one carbon removal technology or approach or pathway that you are most excited to see scale? What's the one that like gets you really excited? Or concept, because I feel like I know what Sophie's going to say. It doesn't have to be a pathway.
Mine-based mineralization is my focus and interest right now. I think especially those pathways that can help remediate toxic mine sites are really exciting because they provide those dual benefits. So Akori was the recipient of our grant this year. I was just so stoked on their work, and it was such a joy to learn about the advancements and protocol development in that space.
Maybe a little less cool, but I'm really excited about like the big like Bex bikers retrofits that are gonna come online at the end of the decade just to like show the world that this stuff can be like big and real. I think like we were all hoping it would be DAC that would be big by the end of the decade, but like that's probably not going to happen. So I think the fact that there's going to be like some CDR pathway that's going to be like an individual facility is going to be removing hundreds of thousands of tons a year by the end of the decade is going to be so valuable to making this seem real.
Yeah. I think a bunch of what I'm focused on right now is what Mitch mentioned. Personally, I think the things I'm most excited about right now are some of the more interesting, kind of innovative, improved forest management adjacent methodologies. They're looking at how you can credit different interventions to help restore ecosystem function or the health of a forest against a baseline and see some more and credit CDR against that. And I'm super excited to see what can happen with peatland restoration too. So both very kind of conservation adjacent pieces personally.
I'm going to stretch the definition of approach here and say the thing that makes me most excited is the idea of publicly owned carbon removal infrastructure. So like not owned by a private company because, we've socialized the cost of the climate problem. So I think we should probably socialize the cost of the solution as well. Perhaps that's because I've been spending more time with the Swedes at Milkywire and no longer focused or spending all my time with Americans. But yeah, I think really the idea of publicizing carbon removal would be my dream come true.
Very cool. Mine is a marine CDR. I come from a background in ocean conservation, and I am just the potential impact blows my mind, but we gotta do a lot to get it there. So I'm just really excited to see where all of that shakes out. And yeah, so I think we should probably switch over to Q&A, but just wanted to take a second to thank all of our panelists, not just for being here, but for all of your honesty. I think that buyers like you that are asking some of these harder questions is what's really helping lift the ceiling for everybody. So yeah, I think I'll pass it off now to Bea for the Q&A.
So thank you, everyone. As Taylor already said, it was really nice hearing from all of you. And there are some questions, and I would like to start with an anonymous question that is, what are your viewpoints on the price per ton that would catalyze a much broader demand in the CDR market?
Can I say a hot take that I don't know that it's the cost right now that's keeping most buyers out of the market? I think we have a bigger impact by clarifying like what corporations can do with the credits that they buy. If we could have more clarity around claims, we would have that would have a bigger impact, I think, than dropping credit prices by 10 to 20%, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I mean, if you could do good CDR for $5 a ton, I think, yeah, we wouldn't have much of a climate problem in the first place. So yeah, sorry.
No, yeah. I agree with you. I don't see price as the main blocker on bringing buyers into the CDR market. I think you have there's always more that can be done if the budgets increase. You can do more tech-based projects. You can do some higher durability projects. That doesn't mean, and this is not me saying that it's not important that we increase CDR budgets or purchasing. But I agree that I don't see it as the main driver. I think you start to see a range of high quality. You have a range of high quality CDR at a wide range of prices. Downward price pressure, if anything, is I think what we're seeing more of, and that's been part of the push on super pollutants. I think that we've all seen in the last 6 to 8 months as a growing, type. It's an opportunity to have pretty high impact purchasing at a pretty low price with strong quality.
Anyone else? No, I think that is it. So thank you very much. And now from Jackson Casas, is there a profit motive for buyer companies other than carbon credits, or are contributions truly just altruistic?
Yeah, for us, there's no motive to generate a profit. I didn't mention this at the top of the call, but we also have an app our merchants can add to their online store where they can fund carbon removal. And there, like, we're not even taking a cut. All the funds that we receive from them go directly to the projects. So it's just an illustrative example of exactly how we're not generating anything beyond just money for these companies themselves.
Perfect. So one from John Hoffmeyer. How do buyers value biodiversity credits if stacked or bundled with CDR? For example, biochar for restoration of natural rangelands.
We've seen biodiversity predominantly as a price premium rather than stacked as a separate credit. I think there's interesting work happening in biodiversity credits. I'm by no means an expert on it, but where we spent the most time has been in assuring that there's strong biodiversity co-benefits to the nature-based projects that we work with, and we do see those tend to gain a premium in the market. Increasingly, and thankfully, it's becoming, I think, the expectation with high integrity buyers that there's going to be a biodiversity benefit to anything that's nature-based. And happy to share in the chat a report we did with JP Morgan recently on optimizing for biodiversity benefits in the VCM.
So perfect. I think so far has been a lot of valuable insights, especially for students. So it's, starting your pathway. And now, oops, where, yeah. Sorry, there was, this one. So I think, sorry, I just said, oh yeah, from Luis Algova. So what responsibility do you as large customers in the CDR market have in enabling innovation, for example, such as new methods, startups?
Yeah, I think that's something we're all actively trying to do. I mean, I think Aidan said like they supported over 40 companies. Like we're in that range as well. So we're just like we're definitely open to supporting new companies all the time, and I think that's demonstrated by just like the volume of companies we're bringing into our portfolios.
Yeah, I think for us, we're buying from a much smaller pool, but we are trying to be very targeted in a way that does accelerate innovation. And I think that our tax deductible option and grant program for research and development explicitly tries to accelerate innovation. So basically, we'll give a company a couple hundred K and say, go figure out how to answer this scientific question or purchase a piece of equipment that you need to use in your lab to model out a certain scenario. So we explicitly try to do that outside of our offsetting portfolio through those R&D grants.
And Mike Robinson asked, what are your views on the likelihood or necessity of a compliance market for durable CDR?
Yes, necessity. Likelihood. When? Depends on the time frame, I guess.
That's something we're actively funding at Wren. We do policy support in the US to Carbon Removal Alliance and in the EU to Carbon Gap, and are hoping to include CDR in the EU ETS and hope to see it in other markets as well. But we believe policy is a large part of the overall kind of climate picture and don't want to neglect the importance of policy within our portfolio, and so are actively trying to support that work.
Yeah, I think
sorry, please go ahead, Luke.
I was going to say, we do a range of policy work. I think it's definitely the places where you see the most nascent kind of new buyers coming into the market are places where there's the potential for upcoming regulation. I think the EU and ETS, Corsia, Japan, up until recently, the IMO, all of those are things we're watching closely, and we know our other buyers are watching closely. And then there's other interesting public support that Aidan knows certainly better than I do, but the Canadian government has an RFP right now for a range of engineered CDR, an open call there. So certainly tracking and supportive of policy to scale CDR.
And one thing we've been writing about recently at Milkywire is how our voluntary action frameworks don't really allow companies to account for the work that they're doing on the policy side. I would like to see that changed. I would like to see companies allowed to account for the fact that they are supporting climate-friendly policy work. I think a lot of times companies want to be able to, check boxes and count things that they're doing, and if we're not allowing them to do that, then they're not able to leverage this like very high potential for change thing, which is to fund policy work for climate.
Maybe I'll just add one comment on this. We're in the process of Wren of evaluating kind of our overall climate strategy. And one of the exercises we've tried to do is understand the cost per ton associated with policy action. And so, if we could successfully scale government procurement programs to, X amount, the cost per ton of that policy advocacy is typically cents on the dollar compared to direct action for CDR. And so we do see policy advocacy for emissions trading systems, compliance markets as extremely high leverage if you think about it from a cost per ton metric. Obviously, there's lots of ways that you can do those calculations and how you attribute it and blah, blah, blah. But it's been an interesting exercise for us to do internally.
Perfect. And I think when you mentioned policy, I think all of you, I completely agree. I think it's a super important point. And a lot of times you think about a market, you don't really go so far thinking about policy. So now I have, let's say, two questions that I'll merge from Alexander Johnson and Harold Hedelman. So what is the minimum length of storage that you can support? And also going together with this, Alexander has read an article that suggests that corporate buyers prefer nature-based CDR solutions rather than engineered ones. So what are your thoughts on this? And I think going together with what is the minimum time and, why would you prefer one or the other as a corporate buyer?
we don't do a ton of work with corporates, and so the other panelists might have more direct experience. But I think, at least for the corporate clients that we do work with, there's nature-based solutions tend to be like more charismatic in nature. Like people always want to plant trees or like post pictures of landscapes in their sustainability reports. And it seems like it's a much more accessible thing to kind of wrap your head around as opposed to something like direct air capture, which is like this big machine and has, it's a little bit harder to tell the story around that. Um, I do think that the tides may be changing a little bit. I know, pre-purchases and offtakes for engineered solutions have kind of skyrocketed in the last year, and I think there is a little bit more emphasis on some of the more durable pathways. But I think just historically, it's like easier to tell a story about planting trees than it is to tell a story about like injecting bio oil underground. And so I'd be curious to hear from other panelists, but that's kind of my like hypothesis, is that like nature-based solutions are just like easier to understand as some of the other solutions, and maybe like it's easier to communicate that to C-suite decision makers than some of the other technical or like tech-based solutions. But that's just my like slightly uninformed opinion.
I think +1 to all that, but I think there's also this kind of third thing, which is all of these intersectional type projects, things that are using waste or things that are thinking about water or biochar projects working with smallholder farms. Like I think that's actually where I think buyers specifically are starting to look, because they can integrate both the sustainability claims with the impact claims and the impact stories. And that's where that communication piece that I think Aidan was saying earlier, like that's where it's key, because in a lot of these cases, you have a corporate sustainability leader who's like has 10 minutes to convince their CEO that this is something they should put money into. And DAC is probably not the easiest thing to do that on. So I think it's not necessarily just nature-based. It's more of these like kind of intersectional projects.
So we have time for one more question because it's 3 minutes. And there is one from Lovisa Carson. How do you believe the CDR market will develop in the next 5 to 10 years?
There could be a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's why I was like, this
I
one
don't
is a
have
very
clear answer on that one. We can tell you where we want it to be.
It is already, like high start, because then when there is a will, there is a way, right? So let's go.
Yeah. I think the things we've touched on, a lot of the stuff that's most important, I think that we're tracking right now. The thing I'm most interested in is, is the sort of disconnect between the need to take actions now to have the carbon market that we want in 5 years or 10 years. A lot of these facilities will take a long time to build. And so that requires, bankable forward offtakes from buyers today. Whether those pieces come together is the thing I'm most interested to see, and that we're working really closely on.
I think it depends on how successful these students are that are in attendance. So I'm going to put the onus on them to
No pressure, guys.
build and build and build.
Loved it. So if you don't have any more answers to this question or comments, I'll pass it over to Sue.
All right. Thank you, everybody. This was great. Lots of insights from the people doing the work on the ground. I love it. And thanks to Taylor and Bea for fielding and organizing all of the questions for today. I just want to share our final slide again and encourage people to reach out, go to our website. If you just search for Carbon Removal Challenge, will come up as the first link. If you can, please donate to our crowdfunding campaign. We also, for next year, we'll be doing this program again next year, and we'll be looking for students, mentors, and judges, and people to join our organizing committee. And of course, we're looking for partners and sponsors to help get the word out and to help fund the program. So thank you, everyone. This has been a really great hour, a great use of our time today. And I appreciate your willingness to come and share your experiences with us. And I wish everybody a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'll be in touch about April webinars.